With 88, this one does not have an equation that's solved for you already. So you have to solve either for x or y. I would say look for the variable that's by itself or has a negative in front of it, because that would be the easiest. So if we solve for this x, we're going to get rid of 5y by adding it to the other side. So this equation would become x equals 5y plus 17. Then we're going to take that equation, put it back into the original, where x is. So this would become 5 times 5y plus 17 minus 5y equals negative 15. And then we can start to distribute. So this would become 25y plus 85 minus 5y equals negative 15. If we combine our like terms and move 85 over, combining our like terms, we have 20y, moving 85 over, by subtracting we have equals negative 100. Divide both sides by 20, and we get negative 5. And then we just have to put that back in and solve for x. I'm going to put this back into the equation we solved. So this would give us 5, or x equals 5 times negative 5 plus 17. So negative 25 plus 17, or x equals negative 8. And then we have to put them together in an ordered pair. So our ordered pair would be negative 8, negative 5. Do we have any questions on that one? Are there any others on this page we want to see? On to the next page. This is solving systems by elimination. So with these problems, you have to have the same coefficient or a similar coefficient, like a negative positive version of the same number in order to eliminate. So for 92, we can look at the coefficients. X has a similar coefficient, 1 and negative 1. To eliminate these, we would add the two equations together. If I add these two, the x's are going to eliminate or cancel, becoming 0. 9y plus a negative 3y would just be 9 minus 3, so 6y. 11 plus 1 would give us 12. Then we could solve for y, dividing both sides by 6. So y equals 2. And then we have to put that back in and solve for x. So it does not matter which equation we put this back into. I'm going to put it back in the bottom one. X minus 3 times 2 equals 1. X minus 6 equals 1. Add 6 to both sides. So x equals 7. So our solution would be 7, 2. Do we have any questions on that one? Yes. Yeah. Any questions on that one? We're going to step down to number 96. For 96, we don't have a variable that has the same coefficient, but we can make one. Does not matter if you choose x or y. I'm going to go with y just because I would only have to change one of the equations and not both. If I choose x, I'd have to change both equations. So if I need these to be the same, I would have to get the top one to be 5. So I'd have to multiply this by 5 in order to do that. And I'm doing that to the entire equation. So this would become negative 35x plus 5y equals whatever 24 times 5 is. Negative 120. Then to eliminate these two, since these are both positive, I can subtract the two equations. So negative 4 minus a negative 35, that would be adding. So it would be positive 1x. 5 minus 5 would become 0. 4 minus a negative, that would be adding. So positive 124. And then we could divide both sides by 31. So x would be 4. See that one? This one? It was 4 minus a negative. Yes, this was positive. And we can put this back in to find our y value. Does not matter which one, but I'm going to put it back in this first one, but you have 3 choices you can put it back into. So this would give me negative 28 plus y equals negative 24. Add 28 to both sides. So y equals positive 4. So our solution would be 4. Do we have any questions on that? Are there any others on this page we want to see or go over or have questions about? On the next page, we are dealing with our systems word problems. I only have one of these circled, but if you want to see other ones, we can do that. Your flying / sailing or whatever those questions are. Remember that with a tailwind means the wind is pushing the plane, so you're adding. And then the return trip is without wind, so that's minus. Same thing upstream and downstream. Upstream would be minus, downstream would be plus because it's going along with the stream. So with this, important things, with the tailwind, average 104. On the return trip, average 66. Into the same wind. We need to find the speed of the wind and the speed of the plane. So you should have two variables, whatever you want to call those. Define them first. I'm going to call them W and P for speed of wind and speed of plane.
What the order is it?
I just wrote W twice. No, they should be different. You could call them X and Y, whatever variables you want. Then you need to write your two equations. With a tailwind, we are adding the two. So P plus W equals 104. On the return trip, we are subtracting the wind. So P minus W equals 66. Then you have options. You can either make these both into slope-intercept form, put them in the calculator, and find the intersection. Use elimination. Use substitution. For this, I think the easiest thing to do would be elimination because I already have like coefficients. So I can either eliminate P or W, does not matter. Let's say I want to get rid of W. I could add these two equations together. I have 2P equals 170. And then divide both sides by 2. So the speed of the plane is 85 kilometers per hour. That would be one of our answers. Then we just have to find the other by putting that into one of the equations and figuring that out. So if I say 85 plus W equals 104, and I subtract 85 on both sides, the speed of the wind. So define your variables, set up your equations, solve for one of the variables, put that in, solve for the other, get your two answers, make sure you label your units. If you get a question like this, make sure that you are paying attention to these. The wind speed shouldn't be more than the plane speed, or if it's a boat and stream situation, the boat should be more than the stream. Do we have any questions on that one? Are there any other questions on this page we want to see or go over or have questions about? On the next page. Now we're in Unit 4, our Inequalities unit. So we're just going to do one or two of these. Main thing to remember here is you have to graph your inequality. If you have less than or greater than, those are open circles. Greater than or equal to, less than or equal to open circles or closed circles. And if you divide or multiply both sides by a negative, the sign changes direction. So for 106, to solve this, we could combine our like terms. That would be negative 12 minus 8. Add 12 to the other side. We have 8 is less than or equal to negative 8b. And divide both sides by negative 8, so your sign is going to change direction. Negative 1 is now greater than or equal to b, or b is less than or equal to negative 1. That would be a closed circle going to the left at negative 1. Do we have any questions on that one? The next one we're going to do on this page is number 111 at the bottom. Same thing, except now we have to distribute. So this would give us negative 16x plus 16 is greater than positive 24 minus 8x. And then you can pick and choose what you want to move. I'm going to move my 8x over and my 16 over. So add 8x and subtract 16 to get negative 8x and 8. I don't know if I did that math right. Yes. And then divide both sides by negative 8. So the sign would change direction, so it is now less than negative 1. So that would be an open circle at negative 1, going to the left. Do we have any questions on that one? Are there any others we want to see on this page? On the next page, we're doing compound inequality. So we just did this not too long ago, so hopefully it's still somewhat fresh in your mind. We're going to do an and an or. For 113, this one is an and. It's all condensed. That means whatever we do, we are doing to everything. So all at the same time. We need to get x by itself, so we're going to subtract 4 to everything. This would become negative 5 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 8. When you draw and inequalities, those should graph together. So this would be an open circle at negative 5, a closed circle at 8, and a line that connects them in between. Do we have any questions on that? For 117, this is an or inequality, so we have to solve both of these separate. So I'm going to solve this one first by subtracting 7 on both sides. We have 10x is less than negative 50. Then I can divide both sides by 10. I'm not dividing by a negative, just what I'm dividing by is negative, so my sign does not have to change. So x is less than -5. I could draw that now or wait till the end and draw it all at the same time, doesn't matter. I'm going to draw it now. So that would be an open circle at -5, going to the left. And then we're going to solve the other side. So add 7 to both sides. So we have 7x is greater than or equal to 14. And divide both sides by 7. X is greater than or equal to 2. That would be a closed circle at 2. And we have 4 in between those two inequalities. Do we have any questions on that one? Are there any others on this page we want to see or go over or have questions about? On the next page, it's going to be one of these unless we want to see another. So graphing linear inequalities, if it's not in slope-intercept form like 124, you need to get it back in slope-intercept form. So subtract out x on both sides. 4y is greater than -5x minus 20. Divide everything by 4. So our y is greater than -5 over 4x minus 5. Start graphing it just like you would a normal equation or a normal line. Start at -5. Your slope is -5 over 4, so you can go up 5. And left 4 as many times as possible. And this is so cool. You get a bigger graph than you can do one. This would be a dashed line because it's not equal to. Make sure you have arrows at the end. And then because this is greater than, this would be shaded above this line. So if you're not sure which one is above or below, look at your y-intercept, draw an up and down arrow. Up would be above, so where the up would be where it is, that's where it's shaded. Do we have any questions on that? Are there any others on this page we want to see or go over? On the next page, these are your systems of inequalities. We're going to do 131. So you have to graph both of these and shade both of them in the correct overlapping shaded area. I would suggest if you get to something like this, use different colors or highlight your overlapping region, something that tells me that this is where both of them overlap. So we're going to do these both at the same time. Subtract 4x and subtract x. So the first one we have -y is greater than -4x minus 2. The second one is y is less than -x minus 3. For the first one, we still need to get rid of the negative in front of y, so we have to divide everything by -1. So y is now less than, because we have to change the sign, positive 4x plus 2. Then we can graph both. So for this magenta, we start at -3, our slope is -1, so up 1, left 1, as many times as possible, down 1, right 1, as many times as possible. This line would be dashed. In my case, I'm just going to leave it as dotted so that I don't have to put little marks in between each. And this would be shaded below. So below on this one would be everything underneath. Then for our other inequality, this is going to start at +2. Our slope is 4, so go up 4 to the right one, or down 4 to the left one. This would also be a dashed line shaded below. So below for this one would be underneath here. So if I'm looking for where they overlap, that would be just this area right here. So somehow you would have to show me that this is where they overlap. Different shading of pencils, different directions of shading, different colored pencils or writing pencils, something. Do we have any questions about this one? Are there any others we want to see on this page? On to the next page. So this is going back to direct, inverse, joint, and combined variation. If we have a direct variation, it has to be a line. It has to go through 0, 0, the origin. So in number 1, you could graph these to see if they are lines or not. It should be in the format y equals kx. If it's not in that format, it's not a line. So this first one is not in that format. The one underneath is in that format, but the y-intercept is not 0, and it needs to be. So this would also not be 1. This second one has a y-intercept, but the y-intercept is 0, so that would be 1. The one underneath that is in that format, but the y-intercept is not 0, so that would not be 1. 2x over 3 is the same thing as y equals 2 over 3x, so that would be in that format, that would be 1. And then same thing with this bottom one, x over 2 is the same thing as y equals 1 over 2x, so that would also be 1. Do we have any questions on that before we get the next one? For number 5, where we are still looking for direct variation, remember that there are 2 different ways to go about this. One, you can set up a proportion. The other one you can solve for k, put that back in, and then find it. If you're setting up a proportion, you need to know that which one is y, which one is x. Whatever comes before the word varies directly is your y. So the interest is y, and the amount deposited is x. To find our k value is always y over x. Yes. So our proportion would be 6630 over 5100. The other side of that, we're looking for the interest when she had 2,000 in the account. We're looking for our y and our x. We can cross multiply and find our y value. So 132,600 equals. And if we divide both sides by 5100, y is $26. Do we have any questions on that one? Before we move on to inverse, are there any others in this section we would like to go over? For your inverse operation or variations, you're going to be using this format: y equals k over x, where x has to be in the denominator. If you were to graph this, it would make these curve-like things. When I'm looking at these, x is not in the denominator for this first one, so this out. X is in the denominator, so that would be 1. This one, if I solved it for y, x would be in the denominator, so that is 1. 1 underneath that, x is in the denominator, so that is 1. The last two would not be. If you graph each of these, the ones that are circled would make that curve looking thing. Any questions on this one? For number 10, the volume B is kept at a constant temperature. That would be our y, but they have variables, so we're going to use those because this comes before the words varies inversely. The pressure P would be like our x, but we're going to use P. If we wanted to solve this, you could either set up an equation or solve it for K. So here, if I set up my equation, this would be 20 times 13. Because to find our K, we're multiplying x and y. Equals, we're looking for our volume when the pressure is 10. So we can multiply both sides and solve for V. So 260 equals 10V, divide both sides by 10, and V equals 26. Do we have any questions on that one? Before we move on to the last Unit 5 objective, do you want to go over any others in the inverse? In objective 3, we're going to do 3 of these. 2 of them are really just setting up the equations. One is actually solving the work. Remember that inversely you are dividing, directly you are multiplying. Jointly is the same as directly, you're multiplying, but there's multiple variables. So for 13, b varies inversely, so this is going to be b equals inversely as f, so that means f needs to be dividing k. There's always going to be a k no matter what. And directly as s means we can put s next to it, or we can put s in the numerator. Directly is multiplying, inversely is dividing. Questions on that? $15. Z varies jointly, so it's going to be Z equals jointly as B and G. So this, you have to have a K, and you're multiplying B and G. And inversely as D, so that means all of this is dividing D. Any questions on that one? Then for 19, we know that the cost C varies jointly. So when we set up this equation, so something like C equals K times the width and the length. So I can say W and L. Then we would need to solve for K and then figure out whatever else. So we know the debt costs $14.40. We don't know our K value. We know the width is 12 and the length is 20. So we can solve this for K and then go back and solve for whatever is asking for. So 1440 equals 240K. So we switch the order there. To solve for K, divide both sides by 240. To get 6. Then now that we know that K is 6, we can go back and find, we're looking for costs. So we need to know C equals, we know our K value is 6, our width is 107, and our length is 4. And we can multiply those together to get our total cost, which is $25.60. Questions on that one? Are there any other questions in this section that we want to see or go over? Carter, I'm going to write your past one. do this whole these last two really quickly and then be done for today. So the next objective, we're in factoring, but factoring out a GCF. So what these have in common, if you need to make a factor tree of each number to see what numbers they have in common, 8 would work for this one. But because this is a negative, we're going to take out a negative 8. These also each have b, so we can take out at least one b. I can't take out more than one because this only has one. So if we take out negative 8b, we are dividing. So negative 16 divided by negative 8 would give us positive 2. If we take out 1b, it would be b to the 5th. Then this would be positive 6, b to the 3rd, plus 3. We know we're done if we can't take out anything else inside, which we cannot. It is prime. Do you have any questions on that? For 134, same thing. Look for what they have in common. I can divide each of these by 2 and a number of b's. The lowest amount of b's that they each share is 3. So if I divide out 2b, I have 2b squared plus 7b minus 7. There's nothing else we can take out of the inside because it's prime. Do we have any questions on that one? So tomorrow, if we have any additional questions we want to go over on this page, we'll start that. Otherwise, we'll start on 6.2.